Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to our August work meeting. And I'm going to ask Ms. Anaya to read the Open Public Meetings Act statement, please.
On Thursday, January 14, 2021, notice of this meeting was mailed to the press and the Current of Egg Harbor Township. Notice was also delivered that day to the Egg Harbor Township clerk and posted on the bulletin board in Township Hall. Advertised instructions for this hybrid meeting were posted on our website and on social media on Friday, August 6, 2021.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Ms. Alabarda?
Here.
Mrs. Bird is not on, but will be virtual. When she connects, I'll let everybody know. Mr. Delabarca?
Here.
Mr. Ireland?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mr. Price? I see your motion, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I saw you move. You're here.
Oh, here, thank you.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Here.
Mrs. Salagi? Mrs. Gilbert Floyd?
Here.
And Mr. Castellano?
Here.
All right.
Okay, can we all please stand for the flag salute? Thank you again, everyone, for coming out to our August work meeting. As we have been through this summer, we have been very busy running our summer programs, as well as preparing for our upcoming school year, which will be here before you know it. I'm very excited about that, and I'm going to turn the platform over to Dr. Gruccio, who will have updates for us as we prepare for next year.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Castellano. Just a quick update. This evening, I always provide a COVID-19 update. And in terms of cases in the district, we are seeing 1 to 2 cases a day here in our school district over the summer with our summer staff in, as well as some students and staff. On August 6th, I think we're all aware now that there was an announcement made from Governor Murphy and a signed Executive Order 251, starting August 9th, that students and staff must wear masks inside school buildings. We are following that order as per the New Jersey Department of Education and the Atlantic County Superintendent's direction in terms of Statute 18A55, which states that it's important that we adhere to executive orders in regard to the state funding that we are entitled to and that we are receiving. So we're very happy with the amount of state funding that we're receiving. This executive order does have a penalty section as being charged with criminal action, as well as ethic charges against anyone who holds administrative certifications or serve as Board of Education members. So we have an obligation to follow that. We have an obligation to follow the Code of Ethics. We have an obligation to follow the Executive Order number 251. So that is an update in terms of COVID-19 and where we are. We are having our pandemic team meetings on August 11th throughout the district. Each school will hold its pandemic team meeting, which consists of teachers, staff, administrators, and parents, and some have students. And then on Monday, August 16th at 6:30 at the high school, we will hold a town hall meeting where I will proudly share all that the Egg Harbor Township School District has done in the 2020-21 school year, and a little insight on what's up and coming for our new school year. Everyone is invited. That is a public forum, which will again be held at the high school, 6:30, August 16th. I will also share feedback from the pandemic team meetings that evening. That's all I have for an update in terms of COVID-19 and where we are in the district. I will also let the board know that, it's that time of the year, which you've heard me say that the last couple times that we met, that we're very, very busy in central office, working on getting new hires in place, new programs in place, meeting student needs, but also meeting compliance issues and compliancy that the county as well as the New Jersey Department of Education expects from us. So board, just so you know, you'll see within the next week being placed on the agenda is our professional development plan, our mentoring plan, and a resolution that will speak to or ask for these items to be approved. And the resolution has to do with our evaluation tool of Danielson that you've heard before. But again, these are compliance issues, compliance things that we have to touch upon and meet every year, and central office is working rapidly to get all that in line and be shared with you for approval at our next board meeting. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Okay, so before we move on, I just want to double check in on just one item. As we did before we opened last year, we had our architect of record walk through our facilities to inspect all of our HVAC and our ventilation systems. And I'm just hoping that we're planning to do that, again before we open in September this year.
Okay, that can be accomplished. We, as you know, we are looking to have construction projects centered around our HVAC systems. But as far as we know right now, based on the walkthrough that was done in October and early November last year with myself, my staff, and representatives from the EHTEA, we were confident in learning that our systems and our ventilation systems are functioning well. And we also have the blue lights in place, so we are very fortunate to have that. Ms. Anaya, you oversee the facilities department, and see if is there anything I missed or any important additions you'd like the public and the board to hear, please speak now.
Sure. So we have, as you know, we hired an engineer of record specifically to do an analysis of our HVAC systems. They did send us a draft report we have in our hands. We are scheduled to have a meeting with them Monday the 23rd to go over everything. We asked them before that meeting if you can just confirm that everything is operational. There were 2 being replaced actually last week, and they did note that. Those were the 2 that needed immediate attention, and that was at Alder and High School. So according to their record, that they're actually going to be meeting with us on the 23rd as far as the order of events of replacement, although they are antiquated and although they need replacement, and we should replace them proactively versus waiting for them to be inactive or be broken. At this time, the only 2 that they identified were at High School and Alder. But I will reach out. We have a meeting with the architect actually on tomorrow. And while we have him here, we will let him know that is, if that's what the board's desire, we can take care of that.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks very much. I just think it was very well done last year. I think it was important for a lot of people to see that, we went the extra mile to be sure all of our systems were working as they should be. So I just think we ought to repeat that as a best practice.
Absolutely. And Mrs. Bird is on virtually attending at this time.
Before we start up in September. Okay, so with nothing else then from our superintendent and administration, we're going to go right ahead on into finance and operations, and I'll ask for our finance and operations committee report, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I think I have the microphone here. Hopefully we got the bugs worked out of them since the last meeting. Okay, the finance and operations meeting met on August 3rd, 6 o'clock p.m. at the Slave Hall Primary Executive Office room. Myself, Mr. Price, Ms. Szilagyi, Ms. Bird, and Ms. Anaya were in attendance. Committee updates. We spoke about food service, year-end recap. We broke even for the year 2021. So I think that was really good news to hear, and I repeat that, we broke even for the year 2021. Plans for September, we're looking at all free meals, a la carte sales and catering, diverse samplings to incorporate, and we're looking at dividers on tables. So this will be for the cafeteria and food service. We spoke about transportation, the year-end recap. Hybrid allowed less drivers, so we had more runs as far as transportation goes. So that's something that we discussed, pre-K and full-day kindergarten, the runs. Plans for September, some contracts until we get more drivers. We're going to do social media, lawn signs, incentives, etc. 2019, 2020, we had 10 kinder and 3 preschool for 370 kids. 2021, we have 700 full-day kindergarten and preschool. Calling parents this week for parent contacts, so that's been accomplished, and we're working on it as well. We're going to consider bringing in special ed runs and contracting out 2 general ed runs for every special ed run. And this will be discussed with the full board as we're talking now. Facilities, we spoke about the project list as discussed. 5 fields getting bid packets ready for improvements on the fields. Plans for September, we're talking about the barriers for desks and cafeteria tables as well. PPE per classroom as it was in the spring, personal protective equipment. Pandemic team meetings, we have one on, we have one tomorrow actually, August 11th, 12th, and 16th. Business office, we did bids, bus routes, well meters, and I had the question, and I know a few of us did at the meeting, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit muffled with this and a little fogged up, but I'm making it through. Well meters, and this and they'll probably explain it a little bit better, are meters that go on the wells throughout the district. And they have to be replaced because if they're not accurate, the state can't get a reading on how much water was coming out of the wells and so on and so forth. And I'm sure she'll elaborate that a little bit further when we get to it. But I found that interesting, so we're getting the well meters serviced and updated. Swift school windows are being addressed. Greenhouse at the high school. And we're also doing an RFP for counseling, a pilot program. So we did a year-end recap. There was $7 million not spent, $3 million towards year 2023, and a possibility of moving up to $5 million towards capital. So that was good news. Audit prep for mid-September, but extension past December will be allowed to do the report. Student activities, part of Fund 20, check registers to be included in the bills list. We talked about that a little before. You're probably familiar with that. It's just another way that has to be done for record-keeping purposes. Grants update, the preschool expansion, possibly expand in-house, other schools, pending strategic planning and more to follow in the fall. So we might want to start doing some more preschool programs in our school buildings. We spoke about the COVID and the ESSA-related expenses. October presentation with the approved amount in November. The new IDEA/ARP allocation was $432,000, with $9,500 of that for non-public use. We talked about the DCA, Department of Community Affairs, local recreation grant for fields, which is still pending approval. You know, we applied for that grant, so hopefully we're going to have good news on it. Action items tonight. We have a few things that we're going to do as far as action items, and I believe Ms. Tanea will cover that when we get to her comments, what's going to go as far as action items tonight that we're going to vote on. There was requested discussion items. The committee discussed attorney fees. The committee discussed the total budget and the components of expenses and noted that insurance attorney-related litigation are paid from premiums and not a budget line. So we discussed district attorney fees, which was good. We spoke about the township pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. We talked about affordable housing. And to the board members, we have links to the things we discussed that are in our Google Drive so you can follow along with what we're doing. We talked about tax abatements. That's linked as well. The township to provide updates and figures, and Ms. Anea will report to the full board the update. We can consider requesting money to be allocated towards the needs of the schools. Sidewalks were used as an example. So there's a possibility that we can get some projects done out of that funding. Mainland High School requested use of facilities for our pool, and we have a gentleman agreement on file, and there's no charge as they've helped us before in the past. This concludes my report, and if there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them now, or I'll turn it over to Ms. Anea. Thank you.
I'll go to Ms. Anaya next.
Thank you. Just some clarification points before the questions, if we can. So part of our committee was discussed the transportation runs. And I know it was a lot. Thank you, Mr. Price. You actually captured our meeting very well. It was only an hour and it was a lot discussed. So part of the transportation conversation was, if you think of conceptually, we had half-day pre-K and half-day kindergarten programs. Let's say there were 400 students involved in that. The bus requirement was for 200 students because you were doing half and half. That makes simple sense. Going into September, we have 700 students between pre-K and K. Full day, which means you need 700 seats on a bus. So although, you're gonna flip her camera? You're so sweet. Okay. Mr. Price is taking care of you. Good job. Thank you. So going into September, we're gonna have 700 students needing butts and seats. So the good news that came out of transportation is with less drivers, with restructuring their paid hourly versus per run, and all the considerations, Ms. Fisher has done a great job assuring us for September with the short staff we have, and we're still recruiting, we are able to handle that load. The 3 to 5 year plan that department has of bringing in more runs every year from the special ed contracted runs is still a goal. It has not been changed. However, the absorption of the new demand, we were not able to bring any more in this year, but we also have not contracted any more out, which was a huge feat. I will tell you, again, Ms. Fisher, credit. Thank you very much for taking care of that for us. In the committee, though, was discussed creative ways of if we bring in a contract run, it just naturally takes more time for a special education run. Although we are being proactive and we are making parent contract phone calls now, which is basically offering to parents who already come and drive their students, or those who are stay at home because they may have a severe needs student, you can drive your student in for a parent contract stipend. So we are actively making calls to over 300 families this week. We had a very good response today, sent out some agreements. Hopefully that will come back completed. But in the meantime, the conversation in the committee was look into bringing in a contracted run, even if it's just 1 or 2, and then with that, knowing it'll take 2 tiers on a general ed run, we may have to outsource some general education runs. The biggest conversation in the committee was about number of students, and where we just said, take away special ed versus gen ed, take away drivers and aides and the types of buses. It's truly just a service we're providing for our students at EHT, and the impact that would have. So although it was only committee, it was 3 of us and 3 board members in that room, we did say we would bring it to the full board because it really is a full board discussion philosophically if you wanted the transportation department to pursue that. And we would then look into what that would take and how we would go about that. But we didn't want to do too much legwork if that was not the flavor of the full board. So we'll come back to that. I know Ms. Bird has her hand up, I'm probably on that note as well. Mr. Price mentioned meters. We have wells. We do irrigate with well water. We don't use our city water and pay for it. It's something we just use for our lawns. The meters had to be updated. They had been antiquated, and the state does need us to update them, so that's going out for bid. Bills list. Oh, student activities. Thank you, Ms. Shoemaker. So Mr. Price also mentioned for student activities. So currently the bills list runs all the proposed payments. With student activities now being part of our general bucket, Fund 20, those payments are made quickly. If the students want to have a pretzel fundraiser to then be able to do something later that week as a reward, the money goes in very quickly and out very quickly. So at the end of the bills list will be actual check registers of the ins and outs for the student activities. So it's going to look a little bit different. There is no action tonight for finance. Everything recommended, you guys have time to digest and review until next week. Regarding the payment in lieu of taxes with the township, I did receive a spreadsheet from the CMFO from the township for the 2021, what was paid in anticipation for 2022. I do have to do a little bit more work to get us to look at apples to apples of what we've done in the past on what the projected payments would have been if we got our proportionate share. What that means is the township is accepting payments from either businesses or rental properties that are not a tax payment, so we don't get it as part of our levy, but they get payments in lieu of taxes. There was an agreement at one point by the prior mayor that said the school district will get the proportionate share. So if our proportionate share of local taxes is 60%, from that local share of that payment in lieu of taxes, we should have gotten, in theory, 60%. We've never gotten that. It's been a constant conversation back and forth with the township. We're trying to build relationships. Keep this conversation going. Out of the committee was a great recommendation. Let's stop talking about swapping money. Maybe some of that can just be allocated towards school improvements. And the example was given with sidewalks. So not necessarily, swapping money back and forth, but hey, if you're getting that revenue from that business, we're not getting our proportionate share, but maybe start adding sidewalks near our schools. So it's just good ideas like that we're gonna try to collaborate with the township. And now, once I get the updated numbers, we'll come out and report at the next committee meeting to the full board. Last, but definitely not least, board members get the agenda the week before, get a chance to look at our agenda and look at any questions they may have. Out of that was a question for finance regarding, we are purchasing additional radios. The question was, how many, what model, where are they going? So it's a total of 14 radios. We have 10 going for the preschool expansion program at Slapeville Primary, 2 for facilities as just additional radios needed with extra batteries ordered as backup batteries, and 2 for the Davenport Complex and to add to their fleet of radios, if you will. We will be getting a full report for, radios and locations ready for the next meeting for discussion. And I believe I hit everything. If you have any questions, I know Mrs. Bird did have her hands up. I'm not sure where you want to go with it, Mr. Castellano.
Okay, I don't see anything this way, so I can't see Mrs. Bird, so go ahead.
I'll bring her closer to the mic. Can you hear us? Go ahead, if you can.
I can, thank you. Can you hear me?
That sounds good. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to piggyback on what we were discussing with buses, and you are correct, Ms. Anaya, that I did. That was my question. I wanted to just speak to the other board members about bringing in those special education runs. I know that, as discussed, they are more expensive runs. They are more time-consuming runs. But I think one part that was missed in the report was that we discussed bringing in these preschool special education runs and outsourcing the runs that go to the private schools in the area. This isn't to say that we don't want our students who go to private schools in the area to, have to be inconvenienced, but at the same time, we have special ed kids. We've had problems with our special education runs. Last year, we heard a lot as a board about some of the problems we had from with students who are nonverbal and, for various things. I won't go into detail. I think you all, remember the phone calls that we received and the reports that we received. We have students who are the most neediest, and while it is more expensive to, service these students on our buses, they are our students. And to have students that go to other schools in EHT buses doesn't seem equitable to me. When we have our own students who are sitting on outsourced buses for an hour, hour and a half. And I just implore board members to consider, while more expensive, bringing in our students that come to our schools who are educated in our buildings onto our own runs. We've had our own transportation coordinator. She did a report out in her report that she gave us last year. It said she wished she had her own bus drivers from EHT with these students, and it would make things so much easier for her and for the students. So I implore, now that it has been brought to the Finance Committee, that you seriously consider, while more expensive, it's the right thing to do to bring these runs in. And while we have so much extra COVID money right now to be utilizing in various ways, I'm hopeful that we can do this for our students, especially our neediest students right now. So thank you.
Anyone else? Miss Anaya has something, and then let me see if.
Yep, just to clarify a couple notes there. So it did come up in committee, but it was not administration's recommendation. I don't want it to make it seem as if that's what happened. It came out of a natural conversation. One of the runs, if we did this, would be a private school run or a non-EHT run, but all the private school contracts we have are the same tier. So we don't have 2 tiers back to back of just out-of-district runs. So I just want to add those 2 points of clarification.
What does that mean?
That means, so the conversation is, if we wanted to bring in, she mentioned the preschool as an example, that is a tier 3 run. For the students to get picked up on time, because it's door-to-door services most times, it takes the time of 2 tiers, meaning you have to start much earlier. So I would have to find a driver and equipment that would have the time slot of 2 tiers. I'd have to outsource tier 2 and tier 3, which is 2 runs for every 1 run I bring in. So the idea is if we had 2 runs back to back of, let's say, a non-pub, that to me makes simple sense. But it would be 1 non-pub and 1 EHT student bus. Because there's no 2 tiers.
Well, here's where I'm confused. So would we be swapping EHT students going EHT schools for EHT students going to non-EHT schools, or you're saying it'd be some mixture of the two? I'm confused
So
as to
when you-
what the proposal is.
If we stick with the preschool example, the preschool example would be preschool disabled students on, we bring 1 run back out that we were contracting out, let's say with special services drivers or shepherd drivers. That's 1 run, 1 load of kids, if you will. In order to accomplish that, I now have to outsource 2 runs because the time frame it takes. So the first run might be a non-pub. We can definitely make that happen. But the second run will have to be an EHT run because we don't have non-pubs in different tiers. They all go at the same time-wise. So it would be a blend. You would be bringing EHT students back in from contracts, but then we'd have to do another EHT run out to contracts and then another non-pub out to contracts or charter, one of those.
Go ahead, Mrs. Gilbert-Floyd, next.
Sorry.
So I just wanted to clarify, because I know you said for every 2 runs, we would bring 1 run back. But I guess I thought that it was saying that we're not gonna, I guess my main goal that I would love to have is that we don't outsource our special ed runs. Is that in the fine print of this proposal?
That is ultimately the goal that was presented to this board for the last 3 years, and last year we were able to bring 5 runs in. This year we're not able to, just the sheer volume of the demand of our own students, like our own pre-K and kindergarten students. So we were not able to bring in another 5 like we were supposed to, which is what the report was to the committee.
Mm-hmm.
We were trying to do 5 a year to eventually bring all 30 plus in, because that is the ultimate goal. We do need more drivers and we're actively recruiting, but until we get there, it was, we basically worked it out where we were able to do the additional volume for pre-K and K.
So how many I guess in my mind I'm saying, how many special ed runs do we have and how many of them are within our district drivers?
I can get for you next meeting the amount of special ed runs total, how many we do versus how many we contract out. And that would be a good statistic or a good piece of data for
Okay.
you guys.
Thank you.
Yes, no problem.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Question for you, Chandra, also. It's my understanding that special ed, no matter what bus company, whether it's ours or somebody else, they stop at each house and pick up each child. So it's the same, but it's different drivers. However, if we outsource regular students or the students that are going to a private school, they all have to go to a central location to be picked up. They're not picked up on their street corners. Is that correct?
So that is a blended question. So for non-pubs, we do not have the requirement. We'll go within 2 miles of the home. So we do a lot of group stops.
Right. So we'll have a lot.
If we were to do this, we would bid to our vendors exactly how we would want the stops to go, and it would be priced accordingly. So right now, I know there are some really long streets in some developments in Egg Harbor Township.
Right.
And if you're behind of us, you will see them stop here, and you will see them stop half a mile down. If we post the contract that way, that's where the bus would be. However, most outsourced companies would just use 1 stop for that half-mile grouping.
Right, and I can understand that for a private school, but we're gonna displace busing for our own residents, that they'll have to most likely take and pick up their children at a couple different set places. It won't be on their street corner any longer, most likely. So we need to take that into consideration. It's not yes, we won't have our own drivers picking up special ed, but their services will not change. They will still be picked up at each home. Whereas if you're talking 2 runs, you're talking potentially 104 How many on, how many on each bus? 56, is it? 54? Okay, so we're talking over 100 potential families that are going to have to transport their child somewhere to be picked up.
It would be how we bid it. So
Right.
if we bid it to have a bus stop here and a bus stop half a mile, it will be priced accordingly.
Right.
So it would be how we put that bid out.
Okay.
So we, for non-public students, we get a lot of slack every year.
Mhm.
That there is a statutory limit on how much you can spend.
Right.
So I can't do a bus stop here and a bus stop half a mile because the cost would reflect that.
Right, and again,
General ed students don't have that limitation, so if we did bid it that way, the way we operate normally, the response to the bid may be higher than a group stop.
Right.
But we don't know that until we bid.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have anything else?
I do.
We'll go with Ms. Gilbert Floyd, then we'll go back to,
I just wanted to get clarity, because I know that most buses, the larger buses, can fit up to 52 students on the bus. But are all of, I'm not sure, but all of our runs, are all our buses mostly packed, or do we have 52 families represented on each bus? Or is it usually depends on the area and the stop, am I correct? Or are we full capacity?
So the tiers we were speaking about in finance was basically the lower grades, which is, I say, pre-K3. So in those grade levels, the buses are about 50. As you get bigger into middle school and high school, they're not as full because of the bigger bags, equipment, sports, and those sorts of things. But the capacity is 54 passenger, but we fill them usually between 45 and 50 at that age.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Byrd.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Thank you. Yes? Yes. Okay, thank you. So, as I said earlier, that there will be the financial impact, the time impact of swapping out our special ed runs. As everyone has brought up, yes, those are considerations. It would be a 2-to-1 swap in some cases. Also, as Ms. Sullivan said, if depending on how we bid out, it could be a matter our private school parents might have to go to a central location to drop off their children. I think considering all of those things are absolutely important. We also have to focus on the academic impact that special education students have when they have a disrupted morning routine. For example, when a special education services bus does not come to their house on time, or it's a different driver, which we've heard so many times as a board, we've had drivers coming in and out and lack of consistency for our students and the impact that that has on them. We hear in special education classrooms constantly that behaviors are precipitated by a certain antecedent. So a certain antecedent that some special education children have, such as having a different bus driver, disrupts their routine. That routine being disrupted impacts their morning, which impacts their education, which impacts the parents, which impacts the teacher. All of those are academic and financial considerations that we have to make as a board, and we have to understand completely. So when we're discussing swapping out a bus and its financial impacts and its time impacts, there's so many other things we also have to consider. So we're talking about taking our most vulnerable population, our special education students, who we have heard many complaints. Yes, I'm sure there's lots of general education complaints on the buses too. That's just the nature of the beast. But our special education population, for example, our preschool population, a lot of those students are nonverbal. A lot of those students are so young. They're 3 years old, they're 4 years old. They don't know their address, they don't know their last names. And we're entrusting outsourced companies to take them to their homes. And in some cases, they've been dropped off to the wrong people and at the wrong locations. So what I'm saying is here, if we have an opportunity to even swap out 1 or 2 runs, despite it being more expensive and despite it maybe being inconvenient for some members of our community, we might be helping some of our most vulnerable students have a more normal day and have setting them up for success. Because I don't think that going to a parking lot to pick up a bus is hurting the academic nature of the general population, whereas it really can disrupt having a alternate driver, alternate aid, or a disruption of the day can absolutely disrupt the academic education of a special education student. So if we're going to talk about academic, financial, and all of the different burdens that may come from bringing in some runs for our students that actually go to our schools, we have to consider all of the problems, including the academic ones that we're bringing about.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Ms. Anaya. We didn't have order for a little while. We need just one person speaking at a time. But we're going to go back to Ms. Anaya. So we've made it clear we want to do the best we can. We want to bring those special ed runs back in. I'm not sure what the recommendation of the committee is this evening.
So the committee wanted to discuss this as a full board to shed light on the fact that it was discussed and kind of talk about that. Administratively, my recommendation is to pursue what we have. At this time, we have the drivers to start September on time with the runs we have. As I explained to Mrs. Bird, we are currently working on parent contracts to try to alleviate the burden so that so many students aren't impacted. Along with every new hire from this point forward is the goal to bring the special ed runs back. Because at this point, the last agenda hired those last 6 drivers. Ms. Fisher has the drivers to start September. We need more drivers. The more drivers we get, that is the goal. And it may be an October 1st start or November 1st start. But I think disrupting runs right now, the second week of August, I would have to actually bid it out and go through this whole process to try to do the swap versus just, let's get more drivers. We've done really great the past few months. I'm hoping that this unemployment stuff stops and we can actually get people back to work and we will be able to get the drivers we need to be able to still accomplish this goal. It just may not be by September 1st. And that's really where we were going with it. And that way, because everything she said, 1,000% agreed. The board agrees. We made it a philosophy, bring at least 5 runs in a year. We heard it loud and clear in transportation, but the burden has increased for the department. And we're able to meet the burden without outsourcing anything more, which is a huge feat. I really want to keep acknowledging Ms. Fisher for that because we're starting on time, absorbing all of that without having to push any more vulnerable students out, as she said. So we're not disagreeing with any of it. It's just if we can stay on track, keep hiring, and definitely keep bringing more runs in, and also offering these parent contracts to decrease the burden. That's the goal.
Okay, I saw Miss Albarda.
I don't want to keep on repeating what Ms. Burt said, but I do agree we need to get these runs back in district. And I agree we have to be ready September 1st for these students. But are we able to do like a price analysis of what it would be to bring the special ed students back into district and put the other students on the other buses?
So timeline, if tomorrow I submit to the county office my bid template, they would have to approve it, which at the pace they're working has been about a week, to approve me to go to bid. I would then advertise, go to bid, get responses within 10 days. That puts us at the end of the month to do a price analysis, cutting it very close to then put everybody on notice, just do the switch. It's not impossible, but it definitely is very, very tight, and all the stars have to align in order just to get pricing, let alone to implement and then make the changes for transportation bus passes, which go out the 3rd week of August. So if we can just stay the course and hire people and not have to swap a route, we will definitely try to bring more runs in. And that's been the whole goal this whole time.
Mrs. Sullivan.
I have to agree with Ms. Anaya. We have been working on getting as many special ed runs back in, and every year we have brought more in, and our ultimate goal is to bring 100% in, but to disrupt it right now would just be a big disruption for not only transportation, but for each individual school. So it's not that I'm objecting to bringing special ed routes back in. We are doing that, and we're doing it every year more and more until hopefully we will be 100%. But like Ms. Anaya said, we just have to get bus drivers. You know, we've been working on that to get more. We've given incentives. We're paying for their licenses. So we just need more people more bus drivers to be employed, and that's where our goal should be right now.
Okay, anyone else? Go, Mrs. Solagi.
You said that it would cost more to have a bus, instead of going to a group bus stop, to go and do the stops individually. So not only would it be a disruption to the department, it would also be a disruption to the parents that have to be at work, but also have to get their student to a group bus stop. Is that what I'm hearing?
For the non-public schools, you're most likely going to have group stops, because Leonard Christian and St. Joe's are right
They
here.
already have.
They already do, but the
and
ones
so those
we do-
parents are already planning for that. But if we're going to take Egg Harbor Township regular ed and have them go to a group bus stop, nobody's planning for that right now. But the special ed students would be picked up at their home as they are now.
Correct.
Okay. So even if you go out to bid, it's not going to be really a savings. It would still cost more money because you're going to have them stop at more stops than a
So
group stop.
fiscally, even taking the bus stops out, because honestly, we can bid it how we want the stops to be,
Right.
but taking the bus stops out fiscally, 2 pieces of equipment running versus 1 piece of equipment running is going to cost more with a vendor. And that isn't, whether, like, regardless of the stops, that's going to be the fundamental baseline is their equipment cost, and then it'll be mileage on top of that, so.
I think we
That's
should
without
work,
going out to bid, I can say the 2-to-1 exchange, as far as just fiscal, looking at that piece only, it would be more expensive to contract 2 pieces of equipment versus 1 piece of
I
equipment.
think we should work hard just to
So-
bring the special ed students back into our transportation system.
And we hear that message loud and clear. And honestly, to start the school year, we're on pins and needles if we could even make this September happen with everybody coming back, and we're able to. That was a huge relief. So the next priority is now moving forward with the plan. Yep.
Okay, so I sense that there's not a unified recommendation from the committee, or is there? But we all want to bring those routes back in. There's no question of that. It's a matter of how we do it. And when, I mean, can we look to revisit in 1 month's time and see what we can bring in by October?
I will have it on the finance agenda every month with an update. I will do that because it is a priority.
I'm just, I'm trying to figure how we get from here to there, because we all seem to want to do the same thing, but in just a little different way. So would everyone be okay with, we're going to proceed as planned, but we want to do everything possible to bring these runs in, and we're going to ask for a report monthly starting with October to see if we can't get them all in by October? Can we really work on that? Okay?
Yes.
I'm seeing, looking like, okay, good.
Yes, we will
Good.
work on that.
Good.
Thank you. And excellent suggestions tonight. I mean, I know there's a lot of things were kicked around, but we'll have something in place to report back to you, something more firm. There was a lot of things that were discussed at the committee where we still needed more information from transportation and so on and so forth. So, but we're on top of it.
Good. Okay. Do we have any other, I guess, questions or comments under the finance and operations area? I mean, good discussion, very important. We know what we all want to do here. There's no question. Okay. So seeing none, then we're going to go ahead into curriculum, and I'll ask for the curriculum committee report.
The Curriculum Committee met on Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021 at 5 o'clock via Google Meet. In attendance was Mr. Della Barca, Ms. Gilbert Floyd, Ms. Moss, as well as myself. Agenda items discussed were curriculum for the 21-22 school year, including the work that will continue to occur throughout the school year to ensure meeting the needs of all students, staff, evaluation rubrics, and annual approval, and the upcoming professional development and field trips, including a Disney trip for the high school band. Board approval will allow fundraising to begin to assist students in the cost of the trip. Discussion items included topics that will be covered in the administrative equity training August 18th and 19th, and also the beginning stages of bringing unified sports to the district. Unified sports is dedicated to promoting social inclusion throughout shared sports training and competition experiences. Unified Sports joins people with and without intellectual disabilities on the same team. We are excited to continue to have collaborative work with the administration to bring this program into our district. Do you have anything else to add?
Are there any questions or comments on curriculum from board members? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead into personnel, and I'll ask Dr. Charlton if he has anything for public session.
I do not, Mr. President, but Dr. Gruccio is going to introduce our new appointees.
Okay, as soon as we appoint them, but yes, absolutely. That's good, you remind me ahead of time, but that is good. All right, so we are going to take action on those then. So I'm going to ask for a motion on 7.2 through 7.7.
So made.
Second.
Is there any discussion on those items? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Alvarado? Sorry, Ms.
Yes.
Alvarado? Thank you. Mrs. Byrd?
Yes.
Mr. Delabarka?
Yes.
Mr. Ireland?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Sullivan?
Yes?
Mrs. Salagi?
Yes.
Mrs. Gilbert Floyd?
Yes.
And Mr. Castellano?
Yes.
Thank you.
And now, the moment you've been waiting for.
Yes, of course. To announce for the first time, I get to introduce new family members of the Egg Harbor Township faculty and staff. For the first time in public, I introduce to you Hannah McLean, a teacher at Fernwood Avenue Middle School. Welcome, Hannah. Congratulations. Andrew Baumgartel, teacher at Alder Middle School. Welcome back. Our district database manager in our ITS department is Caroline Pryor. And 12-month secretary at Alder Avenue Middle School, Emily Montesinos. Congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you. Congratulations from us as well. Welcome. We are going to go forward with our business meeting. So those of you who are here to be introduced, if you'd like to move on to other things, you won't hurt our feelings, but you're certainly welcome to stay as we continue our business meeting. Okay, as we transition here, we're going to move into policy, and I'll ask for our policy committee report, please. Are we going to do that over the thing, or?
Good. Thank you. All right, so I have my car name. Sorry, I have limited Wi-Fi where I am, so I'm in my car in a parking lot.
We hear you.
Good, I'm so glad. All right, on Tuesday, August 3rd, Mr. Castellano, Mr. Ireland, Ms. Scalagi, Mr. Santilli, Ms. Anaya, Ms. Alco, and myself met to discuss our report on the following policies. Policy 7510, use of facilities, has been debated over the last 3 months during committee meetings. Public use of district property has been both contested and supported by committee members. Mandated changes, which are supported by the committee as a whole, include the requirement that school districts ensure all persons who supervise youth programs that are not sponsored by the school district and operate a program in a school district building before or after hours are provided with information and training on the school district's practices and procedures on school safety and security, including non-confidential information on school building security, drills, evacuation procedures, and emergency response protocols are supported by the committee. Additionally, the committee proposed combining policy 7513, use of recreational playgrounds, within the use of school facilities policy. The reasoning behind this combination is that district playgrounds are part of our facilities and should fall under the same policies and conditions as all our other district facilities. Additionally, use of padlocks on our district fences surrounding playgrounds and recreational courts was discussed, and the policy committee recommends the removal. Additionally, revisions for policy 7650 for district-owned vehicles was reviewed and discussed. A specific revision to this policy stipulates that majority board approval will be required for any superintendent to provide an employee with use of a tax-paid district vehicle for employee use and prohibits the use of vehicles solely for commuting purposes. Sorry, give me 1 second. All right, in addition, at the request of a board member, policy 5430 for class rank was reviewed. There's one minor revision to discretionary language in the current policy that will be also recommended for board approval on August 17th. The policy committee charged administration to update data on current use of this policy in surrounding districts. They presented data that was used when this district was first changed from 2018, and the committee asked that that be updated to reflect more current uses. New business consisted of both mandated and recommended Strauss SMA updates with the following policies and Board of Education approved regulations requiring revisions as follows. Policy 3142 and policy 4146, both in regards to non-renewal of non-tenured teaching and non-tenured support staff, revisions are currently on our list to be updated and recommended revisions based on Strauss SMA. Mandated policy and Board of Education regulation updates related to Achieve New Jersey and require mandated revisions that impact evaluation procedures school districts are required to implement were reviewed with the following policy and regulations to be recommended for mandatory revisions. Policy 3221 and Reg 3221, evaluation of teachers. Policy 3222 and Reg 3222, evaluation of teaching staff members, excluding teachers and admin. Policy 3223 and Reg 3223, evaluation of administrators, excluding principals, vice principals, and assistant principals. Policy 3224 and Reg 3224, evaluation of principals, vice principals, and assistant principals. And that completes my report.
Okay, I'm going to thank you, and I'm going to first see if Mr. Santilli has anything to add.
No additional comments, but thank you.
And any questions or comments from board members on policy? Mrs. Salagi.
I want to thank the committee for letting me sit in on that meeting, but the policy still hasn't changed for class rank, and therefore next week I will not be supporting it if it's going to stay the way it is.
Okay, any other questions or Mrs. Sullivan?
I agree with Mrs. Salagi. I won't be supporting the class rank policy as it is written. Again, I will state that all we were asking for was that the class rank would be available to any student or parent when they requested it. And second of all, that we continue with the salutarian and valedictorian being honored at graduation. If those things are completed, then we would be fine with that policy.
Okay, thank you. I see Mrs. Byrd wants to.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that the school rank policy is not up for board vote to vote on this policy. We brought the policy back for discussion purposes because Ms. Salagi asked for that. So we brought it to the committee for discussion purposes. In that, we found one sentence in the policy had ambiguous language, so that language was changed. I think it said something that to the effects of at the discretion of the counselor, and it just seemed very ambiguous. So we discussed that, the change was made. As far as further discussions for this policy, the committee charged administration to gather more information to see if the same standards that were set back in 2018 when the board at the time voted this policy into place, if those same standards are current today. Same standards as far as other high schools in the area, same standards as far as college standards for admittance, and if it's still considered best practices. So there is no current vote as far as this board approving the class rank policy in any way. This policy was just discussed at the request of a board member, and because of that, we reviewed it and found some odd language. But at the same time, with respect to the board member's request, we're asking for more information to make sure that this is still a best practice. So I just wanted to clarify that that was what the committee decided last week, and that's what I was reporting out on.
Yeah, the vote next week will simply be on some technical language. We're not voting to, keep or change the basic policy. Go ahead, Mrs. Slog.
We're not voting to keep it or what?
We're not voting to change the policy other than to make a few technical changes because we found some language that wasn't quite right. We asked administration to just update us on the underlying data, but the policy committee is not recommending any wholesale change to the policy.
Okay, then I'm still not supporting it because it says in 2023, we will not have a valedictorian or a salutatorian. And I understand that we are going to honor more students, but I don't understand why those two positions have to be eliminated because we're honoring more students. It's great, you honor more students, but there's students that strive and make that a goal to be the class valedictorian. And I don't want to see it done away with.
Well, I think several things. First of all, this will take effect not for the coming school year, but for the year after that. So that's the first thing. And so we're awaiting implementing regulations from our administration, which may well include the recognition of valedictorian and salutatorian. We're not sure exactly what they're going to recommend. What you're speaking about, you didn't raise in the committee. So, this is kind of what I'm not sure of. I mean, we heard some of it at the last public meeting, but you didn't raise any of this at a committee level. But nonetheless, that's where we are. Ms. Hauk, would you like to just?
Yeah, I think at this time, the revision to the policy is not anything substantive. It's really just removing one sentence that appeared to be ambiguous. It was just not clear and not clarifying. So it's only up for a single reading next month. It's also my understanding that the committee charged administration with getting further information and to report back to the committee on that further information so more information could be shared about that policy.
Okay. Everybody good?
Mr. Price, I have a question, Mr. President.
Okay. And then I got.
So this is just going to resolve this issue that what was striked out essentially. So it's not
Yes.
over the discussion, is what you're saying, and I mean, it could still be brought up and things could be considered.
Sure.
This is just to entertain this particular adjustment.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all we're doing for next week.
Okay.
Now, Mrs. Gilbert-Floyd, did you have something, or you're? Okay. Mr. Ireland, and then Ms. Alabarda.
So I just wanted to say thank you to administration and fellow policy members for coming to the table and drafting 7510 use of facilities. We've spent many hours on that. We had public input on it, and we came to an agreement of allowing use of recreational use for playgrounds for our citizens because people came out to meetings and addressed their concerns on that. So now we are going to bring that up for vote in the next couple of meetings. I just wanted to say thank you for that and coming to the table. It says it in the policy.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what we agreed to.
It's in the policy. The board requires that the playground of schools afford residents with a recreational area when the school is not in session.
Okay. I think there's a little more to it than that, but that's fine. Any other comment? Mrs. Byrd?
I just want to reiterate what Mr. Price said, that this school rank policy is definitely not quashed for sure. It's a current policy that we have, but it's not a policy that has gone into effect yet, as Mr. Castellano said. I think the fact that we are seeking more information, so that because we have board members that are currently serving that were not part of the decision making for this policy, and with any policy, it's always good to have updated information to make sure that our policies are, the best practices. So while we aren't voting on it in the sense that Ms. Glaggy thought we were, it's not something that we're not seeking more information. We want to have best practices for our students at all times, and not just rely on things that happened in the past or use reasons that happened in the past. As far as use of facilities, I'm not sure I recall exactly what Mr. Eilern was saying, but again, the nature of policy is that we go back and we review and we take what the public wants and we make sure that our district is operating in ways that reflects the goals of our community and our district. So it's definitely something that I think we can still keep on the table and still seek the advice of the administration and follow what they think is best and what our community wants. So again, thank you, for allowing me another opportunity to put my 2 cents in.
Okay, can we just read from that?
Sure. Mr. Castellano asked me to look at that policy, and what Mr. Ireland said was correct, that the board does require that the playground in the schools afford residents with a recreational area when school's not in session. It does also reserve the right to determine, in the interest of safety of district residents and the integrity of the school facility, the uses to which the playground may be put and the hours when it may be used. So at the committee, I believe we discussed that through the superintendent, she would evaluate that, look at any locks or anything like that, and then determine how that would be explored with the community. That's my understanding.
Good. Miss Alabarda?
I just also want to bring up on the school rank policy that there was a different administration at the high school at the time, so it is important to go back and look and speak to the administration now to make sure that they support it too, like that it's something that they still want.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Mrs. Sullivan?
I still don't understand why we make policies and years in advance when there may be an entirely different board by the time it's going to be enacted. So this class rank policy, if it's not taking place until 2023, why are we working on it now?
Well, there was a reason we did that. Go ahead, and I'll let Ms. Hauk run through that.
The reason at the time that the committee discussed doing it that way, so was that no one currently in the high school would be affected, and that you would be starting with a fresh class of individual students so they could pick their classes and schedules moving into the high school for 8th grade and be clearly aware that they could pick schedules and not feel what at the time the administration was indicating was pressure to take extra courses, AP courses, other courses that they needed for their class rank. So that's where the date came from, and that's why. So it was giving everyone a clear opportunity and a fresh start.
So everyone, the students who would be operating under the new would have plenty of notice and would be picking their courses. They'd be starting under the new system. That's why we did it, years out. So we wouldn't say to someone who'd gone through freshman, sophomore, junior year under one system and say, hey, guess what? It's going to change for next year, when they'd pick their courses based on one set of assumptions, and then we, just pulled the rug out and changed it. We did this gradually in a way such that those picking their courses for their freshman year knew going in that things would change for them. Any further discussion on policy? Seeing none, okay. We have a number of items that'll be coming in on new business. We have to talk about a couple items between new business, old business. We have to set a parameter of time, a time frame parameter to do our next strategic plan. So whether we want to start that process in September, run meetings September, October, November, or if we want to let the school year lock in and start in October. We do have a date already, that the final Tuesday in September, that could at least theoretically be used as our first strategic planning meeting. And then we had the possibility of a speaker, but I'm not sure what the speaker would be speaking on. So we were going to get an update on that too.
Yes, correct. Regarding the strategic plan, as the Board of Education knows, our current strategic plan has expired. Are proud to say that we've met the goals and initiatives that were outlined in that plan. So we're very, very proud of that, and kudos to the faculty and staff and the Board of Education for your support of those endeavors. The strategic plan process involves community input, involves stakeholder input, and Board of Education participation. When I first became a superintendent, the board hired New Jersey school boards. Two representatives came down from New Jersey school boards and facilitated the strategic plan process. That is an option for the board. Another option is to let your superintendent facilitate that strategic plan process, which would involve 3 meetings, just as we did in the past, 1 each month. We held those meetings at 3 different schools to be able to accommodate stakeholders. We discussed the needs and input from the stakeholders, and then we broke out into workstations and into groups, and we came up with pros, cons, and proposals, and then ultimately agreed upon a strategic plan that was presented to the Board of Education, approved, and then put in writing and to be implemented. Strategic plans can be anywhere from 1, 3, 5 years, and that's something else the board and the committee would decide on. But I think where we are now, the board has to decide when they want to engage that process. I do have September 28th available to begin. We have October 26th, November 23rd, and 30th. If the board decides to go into December, we can look at a date for December. But I promised Mr. Castellano I would look at available dates where there were no board meetings or conflicts with Board of Education convention. So I'm looking at September 28th, October 26th, or November 23rd, or the 30th of November. But again, Mr. Castellano, I think the board's business would be in their choice, whether you're going to go with New Jersey school boards, which there is a fee involved, or to allow me, the superintendent, to facilitate the strategic plan.
Okay, I see Mrs. Sullivan.
I would be perfectly happy with turning this over to the administrator and using the dates that she has available. She did a great job last time with bringing the community together. We took all the community's ideas, compounded them, and we came up with a great plan. And as Dr. Gruccio stated, we completed our entire plan, which was quite ambitious, I thought. So I would be more than pleased to have her do that again.
Any other thought, Mrs. Gilbert-Floyd?
I just was going to, I guess the question would be, is there a preference for the administration? Is there to do it independently? Or did you feel as though bringing in the New Jersey school boards helped support your vision that you had and helped and assisted you with laying it out? And since we were so successful with the goals that we set, I just didn't know if there was a preference one way or the other. You went,
No, I appreciate your question. I am confident, and it would be my pleasure to facilitate the strategic planning process.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts? Okay, so I guess I'm looking for a little bit of a sort of a straw vote that we'd stay in-house rather than bringing school boards, because we can do this. Everyone okay? And then the second thing I'm looking for is, do we want to go ahead and start with the September date? Is that all right with everyone? Get going with the September 28 is the first date? Okay, that's a take. And then we'll, from there, we'll solidify the October and the November. I know there was a choice of 2 in November. We'll see which is the best of the 2. And we'll try to get that done in the 3 meetings, if possible.
Okay. Okay, that's great. That gives us an idea, it gives us a locked-in date, an idea of when we're going to start rolling out the advertising process, and speak to that on Monday night when I share up-and-coming activities and events to the school district. But to answer your other question, Mr. Castellano, we did discuss bringing in at our next work session a guest speaker to work with the board, to let the board know there were two options. One was Mr. Phil Boyd, who will be in the district that day, who has his focus is on team building and climate and culture. And then another speaker would be from the peer association organization from Rowan University, where we as administration and as staff in the district would be receiving equity training. That does not mean that these speakers cannot come to the Board of Education at any point in time. Okay, so we've decided on the 28th to begin the strategic planning process. And you know, I'm all ears and open to the board in terms of if they still want those trainings, one of those trainings, both of those trainings, and that would be up to me and my staff to see and communicate with those speakers to see when they would have the time to come, maybe perhaps another work session of the Board of Education to spend maybe a half hour with you, an hour with you, and that's your pleasure.
Okay, thoughts? I think it went right in order. Miss Alabarda got it just a little ahead of time. It's like the Olympics, you know, the photo finish. Okay.
I got gold. Okay, so Phil Boyd was the absolute best PD I've ever had in my entire life, and I've gone through a lot of PD as I'm a teacher. So I would and I want to hear about our new programs coming in, so I would like both of them to present to us.
Mr. Ireland.
I concur. Definitely want both trainings if we can. I would like to sit in on all of them. Thank you.
Mrs. Sullivan. Anything, Mr. Delbart? We want to keep it rolling? Anyone down this end? Okay, so
sounds good. Yes, let's do
on
it.
what occasions? During future work meetings? When available? When available, but at work meetings. So, I mean, I don't see.
Yes, work meeting, because there's not much time in a regular meeting.
Well, we're right, and I don't want to ask anyone at this point, at least, to commit to an extra night. So, as opposed to a work meeting, unless that's what the board wants to do.
Start with the work meetings and go from there.
Mrs. Sullivan.
I don't think there's enough time during a work meeting. Our work meetings go on till, 9 o'clock, 9:30 as it is, and I think
That's why I'm asking.
And I think it's going to take a lot more time than a 15-minute presentation. What's the normal presentation, Dr. Gruccio? An hour and a half?
It could be whatever you like. These
Right.
speakers are trained to dig deep. They are trained to give you a summary. So
I think it'll probably have to be an extra night if we really want to get, good flavor for the training.
That's good. Well, then we're going to have to get the availability and find some other nights. Mr. Ireland.
No, I was just agreeing that maybe we do have an extra night just because we previous work sessions went into very, very many hours. We went many hours for board goals and norms. So the training, I think, is necessary for us to go for a couple hours or however long the presentations go.
Okay. Mrs. Gilford.
So I'm all for training, and I'm all for being fine with having an additional night. But my thought is, I was just thinking with Mr. Boyd, if he's going to be one of the precincts, he's going to be in district that day. So it's his availability. So I'm just saying out loud, if Mr. Boyd can come in the day that he's here in the district, we need to lock him in. From what I see on his Facebook, he's a very busy man. He has a lot of, he's a well sought after person. So, but the one for the equity training, is that one that maybe could be an additional night? If that person's available?
Yeah, it could be whatever.
Since that person's local, I'm just thinking Rowan, right?
Mhm.
A
Yeah.
little bit more local, and Mr. Boyd is
North Carolina.
North Carolina? Okay.
All right, so let me understand what we're saying here. The 25th will still be strategic planning?
28th.
20th, the 28th is, yeah, let me get that.
The question was, when is Mr. Boyd coming? It's scheduled to be in the district on the 28th. I can contact Mr. Boyd again and see if he's willing to change that date to accommodate the board, perhaps, at a later time. So I know we're in contract with him. I'm not sure how far we are in that process, but I'm willing to have discussion with Mr. Boyd in terms of that training. Okay?
All right, and I'm trying to lock this in. I mean, for me, I realize Mr. Boyd may give valuable PD, but as a board member, I think we have other things more important.
Mr. President, we
I'll
have
go
a
with-
hand up from one of the members. Ms.
Okay,
Byrd has her-
yeah, I'm sorry, I can't see. If
So we're
you- if you
relaying,
could-
yes.
Yeah, if you actually raise, because I can't see it. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just not sure I'm following correctly here. Are we discussing if he's going to come the evening of the 28th? Are we discussing if he's coming another day? Or I'm just confused.
Yes.
And if he's already coming the 28th for the benefit of our staff, if we move the date for him to present to us, wouldn't that incur another cost? I wouldn't want to incur another fee. And what is it as a board that will benefit from? What is it that he will present to us? I'm not familiar, but I love PD, so I'm all in. I don't care if it's an extra night or that night, it doesn't matter to me. But I feel like I'm missing part of the discussion a little bit.
No, you're not missing. I'm trying to get clarity on exactly what Mr. Boyd would be speaking to us about.
Climate and culture within your organization, within your school district, and also team building with each other as a team, as a board, with each other, with administration. He's also a motivational speaker. I know we've had him here before, and he did a great job, and there was team building that occurred. Now, this might be something that we look for in January, when there's a new board sitting up here. So again, strategic planning is a topic. You seem to decide that September 28th, we're going to go with that. Let's stick with that for now, and then I will reach out to Mr. Boyd and see if I can move it to January, if that works better.
I see Mr. Delbar.
I was just going to agree with Dr. Cruccio that possibly in January, if we have a retreat even, it could be part of our retreat evening, because we'll have a reorganization time in January, and we have all the items to look forward to. I don't know if it's too much time. I have no idea about that, but possibly it might tie in with a retreat.
Okay, so,
Ms. Byrd has her hand up again.
so January. Go ahead, Mrs. Byrd.
I feel, with the new board coming in, some new board members coming in January, it probably sounds like it would be very beneficial for some team building, experiences. I know for myself as a board member, if we utilize work session time for a presentation, I would much prefer to have a presentation on literacy or on math or on STEM, something that I think our parents could also benefit from, understanding the process of learning how to read in their children and how their children's being taught to read in our schools. From my perspective as a board member and as a parent, I would rather have a presentation during work session on our literacy procedures at school and also best research processes on literacy.
Okay, very good. So I think we have some agreement here. We're going to go ahead with those strategic planning dates that we discussed. We're going to look at one or possibly two of these speakers for a retreat in January. Possibly work sessions as well. We're
Hey,
good
Mr.
with.
President, maybe we can't fit in at least the one that Ms. Byrd specifically mentioned
Sure.
into a work session. They don't have to all be in a work session, but,
Right.
you know, I
Okay.
don't think that would be a big problem because everybody can participate. So I think we could be able to maybe fit that in.
Okay. All right. So one other thing before we move into, we're almost to public comment. We have board goals to renew as well. Now, I'm going to make a suggestion. We just had a lengthy process updating our norms. We spent quite a bit of time updating our board goals last year. So I'm going to make a suggestion that we carry those goals over and use up the relevant dates, because we'll be doing strategic planning. We'll still be adapting for COVID. The goals won't change, but the dates will change. And Ms. Anaya and I will just go in and just change dates. So we won't do a language change, but just dates, and let everyone take a look at that next month at our work meeting. So maybe that can consolidate and keep that moving for us. Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Just dates. Okay, very good. We've got a lot done there. Good, so we're going to move communications. We have a new board calendar, and there were two versions. So obviously the one with the 28th as strategic planning would be the one that we have. And then I'll ask Mr. Del Barca if he has anything from the New Jersey School Boards Association.
Oh, you know I do, Mr. President. Mr. Ireland and I participated last night in the hybrid New Jersey School Board Association County Association Leadership Meeting, which is a statewide meeting. There were two guest presenters on the topic of dealing with difficult and controversial issues as a Board of Education. I'm going to share some of the items that came up, but it would be too extensive to share everything. But as Pete knows, I will share this with you anyway, Pete, because I share all the information with all the local presidents in Atlantic County, so I will make sure everybody gets this. But some of the topics or items that came up, there were two presenters. One was an attorney, and the other presenter was a communications coordinator for one of the North Jersey high schools. Some of the points that they made were the superintendent, board president, and members all should be talking a common language. We should be communicating throughout the whole entire year, which we do here. We should stick to the facts. We should establish boundaries for our public comments, which we do with the 3-minute timeline, but we also should probably have a 30-minute period established for public comments, and then we can deal with that depending on the number of people at our meetings. Some other points were, the attorney's points were, the reason we're having more controversies is social media and the media outlets. There's so many more media outlets now, and we have so many more things happening that there's a lot of topics that we discuss. Another point was politics. Politics are creating more controversy instead of fixing the problem, so we have that concern. One of the suggestions was to have parent advisory committees, possibly at every school building, so that the parents can tell administration what the different topics of interest in the community is. what's going on in the community. It's a direct way of getting information back to administration and to the board. We need to educate the community more as to the role of the superintendent and the Board of Education. That should be reminded every once in a while. These meetings are Board of Education meetings with community in attendance. So sometimes that gets misinterpreted. We should be consistent when speaking to the public during public comment. The president these meetings are the president's show is the terminology that they used. He or she is in charge of the meeting, and we should respect and support the board president's role. And if there's some rudeness happening at the meeting, or interruptions, or disorderly conduct, the president has the right to call a recess. And they should do that. They should use their gavel to control the meeting. So I know Pete and I have had this experience, so it's kind of interesting to hear from other people. We should continue live streaming of meetings. And I understand that there's going to be something in legislation possibly mandating that boards of education meetings should be live streamed. And that's in the process for what was stated last night. Interesting point was we do not need to have the emails or the call-ins during our meeting. If we are live streaming and people know when our meetings are held, if they're that concerned, they should come to the meeting and question us. So I thought that was an interesting point that was made. I believe that's most of the ideas that came up, and it's an interesting topic. I thought they were good presenters, and Mr. Arlo, if you want to share anything, because he and I both took notes last night and shared the notes with each other.
No, pretty much the same stuff, but I do want to add, though, any board member can recommend a recess, not just a board president, so at any time,
if you
anybody
observe
feels
something that's going on, a board member can pass a note down to the president, maybe we should have a recess, or they can make a motion to have a recess. So fortunately, that hasn't happened too often around here, but it may in the future. So, but that's basically the report, and I'll share this with the board president and superintendent, and possibly with all the board members, because I thought it was one of the better meetings actually that they had. It was pretty well attended. These are hybrid meetings, and what the state is doing, New Jersey School Boards is doing, they're having 3 meetings this summer in this process, and they're trying to iron out things, technicalities, so that when we have our county meeting in October, we're going to have a hybrid meeting at Atlantic County level, and all the technicalities of how that meeting is run hopefully will be resolved, so we have successful meetings. So that's my report. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Delbarca. And we had a difficult year last year with COVID, and I did have to use the gavel on a couple of occasions, but hopefully that'll be far between, few and far between. We do plan to continue live streaming as we are. As well as rebroadcasting, but we will, as we've all agreed to, in September, we will go back to a fully in-person meeting. So the call-in will continue through August, but as of September, we'll return to the meetings as they were, but with the addition of live streaming as well as broadcasting. So with that, now we're at the point for public comment, and I'm just going to give guidelines. We ask that you give your name and address for the record, and limit your comment to 3 minutes. We cannot talk about personnel or litigation, and if it's the case that you have a very complicated question, someone may need to get back to you with a full answer. So we'll start here in the room first, and then we'll go if there are any phone calls or emails next. So we'll start right here in the room first.
Do you walk up to the center?
Yes, please come forward. We'll make sure that microphone's working, and if you could give your name and address.
I'm Stardust Santiago.
Please touch the button right in front of you before.
All right, my name is Stardust Santiago. I live at 3 Golden Court, Egg Harbor Township. I am a parent of 2 students in the district. I'm here to discuss the mask requirements, vaccine pushing, and restricting our ability to make health decisions as parents. It is an infringement upon our rights to our children, and it is our duty to protect our children's health, safety, and well-being. COVID information through research, clinical studies, and medical and science communities have provided us with enough information to make informed choices about our risks, personal health, hygiene, disease spread precautions and vaccine information has been the forefront for the last 18 months. By masking our children, it takes away their ability to speak up about situations that affect their personal safety and right to choose. There is not enough research to support or convince me to mask my children when they're not the at-risk group. In fact, they're the lowest risk group to contract or transmit COVID in social situations alone. Educationally speaking, when introducing background noise, other students in the learning environment and distractions further complicate learning, coupled with the muffled teachers' voices, presents the inability to teach effectively. Masks prevent students from picking up facial cues and tone fluctuations used to learn and attribute to learning challenges in all student population. Health risks to our children wearing masks could increase suffocation between the ages of 2 to 14, as well as hypoxia, hyperventilating due to mass anxiety, situational anxiety while in school, to which there is not enough information or research to deny that there might be long-term health effects to our children. The research reported from science and medical communities does not prove a significance to the health of our children, and the statistics show that flu, car accidents, and suicide death rates are higher than COVID death rates, less than 2% among school-age children. As a parent, I'm exercising my right to make medical decisions in the best interest of my children, and the exclusions provided in the executive order from the New Jersey governor states that children with documented medical conditions, IEPs, 504s, or Title IX inclusions prohibits the school from excluding my children from public school education based on the above-mentioned reasons. Masks induce medical-related issues that increased by physical activity while in school. Lastly, executing tasks such as educational instruction are compromised because teachers are not able to effectively teach their students when they are not clearly heard, while interfering with our students' ability to learn through dialogue when masked. If we are permitted to be unmasked while sitting in restaurants, the same choices should be extended to the students while sitting in their assigned desks, since the teachers are the ones who are transitioning between classrooms. Teachers' unions are protecting the educators. It is our duty as parents to protect our children, and that is what I intend to do from this point on. I do have some links and some paperwork that I would like to give to Ms. Garuccio, if possible. I will be emailing my statement as well to you after today's meeting. May I?
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. I'll just say a few brief remarks. I'll turn it over to Dr. Garuccio. As I think many people know, you're not in the right forum because the governor has made this decision. We are obligated to follow that decision or risk loss of not only state aid as well as put ourselves at risk of being an ethics violation for not following state law, rule, regulation, and guideline. So it's going to be our intent to follow the state's direction on this. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Garuccio if there's anything she wants to add.
Hi, Mr. Castellano. I think you covered most of it as I opened up with my COVID-19 update earlier this evening. In the end of the day, it is an executive order. It is law. As school officials and folks who work in the school district, we are to follow the law. If we do not follow the law, we subject ourselves to be charged criminally, disorderly persons, and it's an unlawful act. We can turn the attorney for more law jargon. However, I do know, in fact, that I sit here and I represent everyone and everything when it comes to the school district, and I appreciate your concerns. I appreciate the medical concerns, and I get it. I wish I had a different answer. The answer I have is that it is a governor's order, it is a law, and we have to follow the law. Ms. Hauk?
No, anyone can come back up for 3 minutes, but we're not going to go back and forth. I'm going to see if anyone else wants to speak first after everyone has had their turn, if you'd like another turn. Mrs. Halkalko next is, so we're still answering this one.
Are you still answering this one?
Yes.
I'll be quick, though. You can stay up there.
I didn't realize
It's okay, you can stay up there.
Thank you.
So just to echo what Dr. Gruccio said and Mr. Castellano said, right now, we do have an executive order that we've been mandated by the Department of Education and the Governor's Office to follow. One of the things that they both mentioned was under New Jersey statute, one of the things that can happen if we don't follow an executive order is we could possibly lose state aid. In addition, as individual board members, you have an obligation, and board members have an obligation to follow the orders that come down from the state regarding school districts. One of the other things that I think Dr. Gruccio and the administration is prepared to talk about is there are certain exceptions, and those exceptions were mentioned tonight. So that's something that if you individually feel like you meet one of those exceptions, you can certainly contact your building principal to discuss options there. Is that the correct person to contact? Okay, so that would be the correct person to contact if you feel like you meet some of those exceptions. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, and before we move on, I just feel obligated to say that I believe that what the governor has put forward is in the best interest of the safety of the students. And that's what we're here for. We're here for students.
Whatever he says is what we got to do as far as that goes. I wasn't even touching that one with a 10-foot pole, but
Name and address, please.
Debbie Rockelman, 189 Alder Avenue, EHT. Quickly, do the preschool children need to be potty trained in order to attend school? Anybody got an answer? No. Is there a requirement for potty training? So why are we having our staff changing the children of preschool, touching their children who are not theirs, their genitals, while they're being cared for in school? I mean, really? You got kids who are coming here who are not potty trained, and our staff is having to change them. I have a problem with that, a big problem with that. That says lawsuit to me written all over the place. I mean, you think what you want, but that's my opinion. I just found out about that, and I'm horrified. No child should be in this district that has to, okay, there are special needs children that are different. But normal kids who are in there should be potty trained. No staff that works for the township, for this school district, should be changing diapers because a kid is not potty trained. It's a lawsuit. I'm done with that. Now, Christy, are you there still? Anyway, I'm happy that somebody's looking into some information on the class ranking. I want data. This was a decision and a policy that was put into place with no data whatsoever. Best practices were just based on what other school districts were doing. We were big data people. I need data for this. I need data to get rid of the American Reading Company. I need this and I need that, and so forth and so on. We need data. I haven't found any. All I have found is opinions of people. Well, it's our opinion that this works and this is going to work. Okay, you mentioned the photo finish. So the photo finish horse loses the race, doesn't get the medal, doesn't win the money because the guy next to him was like a second off. How about in swimming? How about all the athletics in the world? You want equity? Is that what you're pushing for? So, I mean, data. Let's come up with some data. And then when we revisit it, we have something reasonable, logical, and equitable to look at. That's all I want. I want somebody to tell me, here, this is what the data shows. This is why, not emotionally, not because we don't want a kid crying in the corner. This is the real world. Okay, when you make everybody the same, what is there? A bunch of people walking in a group. Oh, good, he's checking the time to make sure I don't go over. Bring the buzzer.
I'm going to check the time.
Bring the buzzer. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you very much for your comments on preschool. There was much data presented when we implemented the class rank policy. best practice means you look at data and you look at research. That's what best practice is. No, we're not going to go back and forth.
Sorry.
But I mean, you,
I apologize, Pete.
we're not going to go back and forth.
I
We-
apologize, Pete. Thank you. Oh, he had to do the gavel.
Yes, we're not going to go back and forth. We're going to have
I
order.
apologize to you 5 times. Why you keep going?
Because you're still talking out of
Oh,
order. You're out of order. Okay? So what we're going to look at, you look at data and you look at research to come up with best practice. That's what it is. And there was much data and much thought put into it by our high school administration, and we're going to continually update that to ensure that the information, the research, the data continues to support what we're doing. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. My name's Jamie Ruggiero, 3 Whitewater Lane, Egg Harbor Township. I wanted to start my statement by saying thank you for getting the special ed students back in school last year. As a special ed parent, I appreciate that. I know you guys worked hard to do that. It did not go unnoticed. We do appreciate it. That said, as far as masks, I understand that you're in a position to follow Dictator Murphy. However, according to the executive order, it does state, when a student's documented medical condition or disability as reflected in an individualized education program, IEP, or educational plan pursuant to Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 precludes use of a face covering. So when I sent my son back, I wanted him to not wear a mask at all because he hates going to school now. He cries. He tries to pretend that he's sick and dying so he does not have to go to school. He has a tongue thrust. His mask is soaking wet at the end of the day. He's breaking out in rashes. It's a nightmare for him. He's not learning. He's not enjoying the experience. So I had asked, because of that executive order, and that was in place last time, can he, as a special ed student, not wear a mask? I was blocked and was told that, in order to send them back, you have to follow the state guidelines. Now, no special ed parent ever anticipated to have to include in their IEP for their child to cover their face. I never thought that that would be something that I would have to make sure would not happen. So what I'm asking is, when a special ed parent tries to do what's best for their special needs child, do not block us. Allow us to change their IEP. Allow us to do what we need to do to take care of them. And otherwise, I cannot send my son to school to be suffocated all day because he can't handle it. So thank you, but I do appreciate what you guys did. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Anyone else?
May I ask for the contact information? Because
Sure.
I would like to get clarity on
We do have a
the statement.
document,
You
yeah.
have it? Okay,
Yes, we
thank
have
you.
it, thank you.
Someone will be in touch with you tomorrow.
Hello. So my name is Priscilla Rodriguez, 220 Shires Way, and I have a couple of comments from hearing you guys. So number one, what Mr. Barca was saying sounds a lot like censorship. And I understand that this is the board's meeting, but we pay you work for us, right? Because we're the parents, we're the ones sending the children to the schools. So there should be, I understand, and I completely agree with parent advisory committees. I think that is a great idea. And I hope that you guys continue with the public comments, because, when you said that if it's really that important, you will make every special accommodation to be here. I understand that, but when you're, for example, like me, I'm a special ed mom, it's really hard. You get off of work at 5, you cook, you try to get everything to come here, the babysitter doesn't come, it's really, really hard. So I understand you're just saying the recommendations that they were saying, but I hope that you guys do continue with public comment and listening to us. And I see that there are some, advocates on the board, and it's refreshing to see and hear. With that, I also wanted to see, during the curriculum time, I actually wanted something a little bit more specific to know what the curriculum is going to entail. We see across the country, they're teaching critical race theory, they're teaching gender identity, they're teaching a lot of things, and I thought that that was going to be part of the curriculum, that you guys were going to speak on that. So if you guys can kind of let us know a little bit more in detail about the curriculum, because I thought that, that was just flown by. And I think that's it.
Thank you very much.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate that. We will still certainly listen to public comment. You may or may not know, we are volunteers, so we are not paid. We volunteer our time, and I work till 5 o'clock as well. And come over here and volunteer my time. Been doing it for 20 years. I'm going to let Dr. Gruccio, if there's anything you'd like to get into, just to clarify where our curriculum information can be found.
Yes. Just to explain, at work sessions, the reports that you hear are based on the curriculum committees that are held, curriculum committee meetings that are held once per month. So the report outs that you hear are the topics that were discussed at that meeting, with the board committee being transparent, sharing with the public, and sharing with their fellow board members what was discussed in those meetings. Those meetings are attended by 3 board members, sometimes 4, but no more than 5, because once there's 5, then it's a forum and they cannot function in that capacity. So that's why there's different board members that attend different committees, and then when they come together at this work session, they share their information. Regarding the curriculum, if we were to sit here and share out information about our curriculum, we would be here 24/7 probably for a whole month or so. I think I'm safe in saying that. However, you can find out more about our curriculum if you go to our website and read about our curriculum, in which our curriculum is in line with New Jersey learning standards, and each one of our content areas are supervised by an individual administrator. So if you have any information that you of interest, that you have questions, you can reach out to those supervisors or to our director of curriculum, Ms. Lily Moss. I think I covered everything in terms of perspective. You said you wanted information on particulars. Critical race here, I think, was one. May I ask you exactly what you mean by that? So I think what you could do is you could reach out and give us a call tomorrow, or we could call you, get your information and call you, and we'd be glad to have a more in-depth conversation with you to address your questions.
Are there any more comments here in the room before we'll go to the phones? I want to see if there's anyone who hasn't spoken first. I need to do that according to Robert's rules.
Can you hear me? Okay. Regina Bongiorno, 405 Starfish Lane. I guess to bounce off of that, it's a little segue. With the curriculum and changes, there are a lot of, communication, kind of like Del Barco said, that in one of the advisory things that, social media is, blooming, and that's why parents are more informed. We're, on social media, we're trying to communicate with each other to get a sense of what is going on. I think in order to squash all of the concern is more transparency, and you have, addressed that before, that you are transparent, and I do appreciate what you guys do, because you are volunteers and you come here and you tell us, what we need to hear from what's going on from the standpoint. But to have, Dr. Gruccio did say that there is a way that we can find out what the curriculum is, but I guess the concern is what changes are coming and how do we, opt out of them if they don't meet our either religious beliefs or our moral or core values. I did have a question for Chandra. The last meeting, there was a comment about playgrounds. Davenport project was put on hold for some time, and then it was kind of mentioned, I don't know if I have the exact information correct, but Swift is getting another playground. I just wanted to kind of see what the estimated project date for Davenport would be, if that is still going to be completed in the same amount of time as Slayball or Swift. Mr. Price did mention that the dividers for the tables at lunch, that was mentioned tonight. So that kind of segues into how is lunch going to be handled going back? Because last year we did the mass distribution and we're told in high school and middle school level that we could not have lunch in school because of complications. So if we could figure out, what the dividers are going to look like, how we're going to handle the lunch. And if we're going to continue to mass distribution, because you did mention free lunch for all this year as well. And I think that might be, one last thing, I'm sorry. On regards to following Murphy's Law, which is an executive order, not a law, but a lot of boards and superintendents have wrote letters objecting to this mask mandate because of all of the medical and complications it is causing our children. So I'm asking if the board or the superintendent is willing to send an email or letter to Mr. Murphy and object to this whole mask mandate and make it optional, not a mandate. And that's it. Thank you.
Wow, where to start? Okay, so first for everyone, Mr. Lou Delabarca, that's his name is Mr. Delabarca. We understand a lot of folks are on Facebook, but there's not necessarily a lot of accurate information going around on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, we have a website. If you want to know what's going on in the district, that's the best place to go. There are a number of Facebook pages and people who post on Facebook and say a lot of things, but they're not necessarily accurate. Let me see. So curriculum, I think we touched on that. I'll see if there's any more that Dr. Gruccio wants to talk about. Anything you want to touch on the playgrounds?
Absolutely. So the playgrounds at Swift Slayball Complex have been approved by the board, and the design, everything has been looked at by the architect, got the fencing, the walkway for ADA compliance, the playground is set, it's been ordered, the 12-week delivery time, so we're looking at the fall for that. That's already been in the works, probably October. The Davenport Complex, there's more stakeholders involved, and they've presented beautiful playgrounds. We have to go back and get some different designs. I'll just give an example of Swift Slayball Complex has 3 clusters of playground areas with a walkway in between. Davenport proposed this beautiful design, but it's all one huge chunked unit. And thinking of the student age group as well as accommodating for disabilities, it was going to be hard to reach certain children, and they're all clustered together. So we shared the design of the Swift Slayball Complex with Davenport's administration. They're now meeting with a vendor again and going to do smaller clusters where it's a bigger area of ground, but different setups so that you can kind of spread the classrooms out and have maybe more than one out there at the same time, or maybe if different children are in different areas, not have to have them all on the same bigger unit. So timeline-wise, once that decision is made, I'm hoping to get a proposal by the end of this week, worst case next week, but then again, delivery time is about 12 weeks out. So it's definitely in the works, it's definitely happening. It's just a matter of design and making those final decisions. Lunches, I don't know if Dr. Gruccio wants me to take that. Yeah, okay. You'll do it? Okay.
Guess it's my turn. Regarding Facebook, I don't like Facebook. As Mr. Castellano said, we function on facts. Facts are found on our website. Facts are found by having conversation with school district personnel. Conversation that goes on Facebook goes down the wrong path, and the facts are lost. So I don't read it. The information there, I don't waste my energy on in terms of getting upset or supporting something that's not factual. Regarding opening up in September, we look to open up as normal as possible. I stated before, mask mandate is in place. However, we look to open as normal as possible. That includes in-person instruction, full day, and where we are serving lunch. The only difference is that lunch is free for all. Difference in terms of normalcy. So lunch is free for all. We have met with administrators of each building, and they have been running around their buildings. Probably some are in there this evening, in fact, counting not only desks, but spaces in cafeterias as to where students can receive that lunch in a safe situation where 3 feet of social distancing is in place. With that, we have pandemic teams meetings that are scheduled this week, August 11th. And at those pandemic teams where the stakeholders come together, they will share their input regarding the needs that they want or need with the stakeholders in those meetings. That information will be shared with us. Right now, I know that there's a need, and I'll let the board know, and that's why we have extra money for the situation like this, a need for more tables, for chairs, and possibly tents in our schools. But we're not there yet because, again, the administrators were put to that task, and we are waiting for that information so that we could proceed and accommodate our students in a safe and healthy environment. On August 16th, I will be holding a town hall meeting, and I will have more information that I will share from those pandemic team meetings and more information as we move forward to open our schools. But to sum it all up, we plan to open in September as normal as possible, full day schedules.
Thank you, Dr. Gruccio. Anyone else here in the audience? Mrs. Butcher.
Good evening, Liz Butcher, 327 Sea Pine Drive. I originally wasn't going to say anything tonight, but thank you all so much again for your time as volunteers. I think it's important to make that distinction. When I think about the professional development that's going to be upcoming on equity, Mr. Delabarca and Mr. Ireland, I implore you to ask whoever the PD instructor will be, if they think it's equitable and they think it's a good idea to shut off public comments come September, okay? I'll just give you a quick example. And this is just not even as a special needs mom, as a mom of 4 kids. On a good night, I can get my partner to help me with football for one child, fall ball for another child, dance for the other child, and now the youngest wants to do karate. So tonight, I was able to come in person because we only had football, because fall ball hasn't started yet. And neither has karate, and neither has dance. Then in a couple of weeks, we can only multiply ourselves so much, right? So maybe I want to sit in a parking lot, and I want to listen in live streaming. That's wonderful. But if I have a public comment, then what? I have to come in person? Now that's just my situation. Think about the single parents. Think about the parents who are working. There's so many different variables. I implore you to think about equity and what that means to the parents and caregivers in this district and being able to participate in this public forum. Okay, so that's just my comment just for tonight. My questions are, do we have any updates from the curriculum committee on reading? Are the bus aids provided by the contracted bus provider, Shepherd, or are the bus aids provided by the district? What does the training look like for those bus aids? I'll also leave this last comment. As a mother of 2 children in the district with special needs, I have never and will never put them on a special needs bus because I have heard too many horror stories, as you all have heard this year. I don't want my kids on a bus riding around the entire county for an hour and a half before they get to school at the beginning. We are giving preference to non-public students over our special education students in district? How is that equitable? You guys have had the summer to think about this, and now we're going to put it off till October. But again, when we think about equity, let's put our own students first. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate that. I'm going to just put another avenue to contact us is literally to go on the website and click Contact Us. That's there 24/7. In addition to everything we have, a comment was made about us being transparent. Well, there's the camera. When I first came on the board, we weren't televised. We're now simulcast live, rebroadcast. Everything we do is recorded and televised and shown. The business of the board is being done right here in front of a camera. You know, I don't know how you can be more transparent. Other items from there, Dr. Gruccio, we might want to pick up on reading.
As far as an update with reading, I mean, Ms. Moss, I know you just recently provided one, was it June? Okay, and the curriculum committee, I know you give them updates, which we report out. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Basically, our plan is moving forward with the training in the science of reading, beginning in September for our teachers. They had a kickoff in June. We had a training for administrators in June, and that training will occur on one of the first opening professional development days to get started with that work. We also have the plan in place for special education to bring in interventions and working on the professional development and bringing those programs in this school year as well.
Ms. Anaya, have comment on bus aids?
Bus aids.
Yeah, so our bus aids on our buses are our bus aids on a contracted run of their bus aids. Last year was the first year we were able to use one of our special ed supervisors to train the bus aids we contract with, and we'll be doing the same process this August, training the aides that serve our students with our special ed services supervisor of our expectations. So that's that piece.
Okay. Anyone else?
Good evening, Elizabeth McBain, 115 Stillmanville Road. I just had a couple things I wanted to address. I'm a little discombobulated here now that everybody's asked a few of the things I already did. Anyway, regarding the curriculum and potential changes to the curriculum, I think several people here, as well as people at home, were thinking that we were going to hear what the actual changes to the curriculum were going to be. I think there is some concern and anxiety about what may be added to the curriculum that some parents may not be in favor of occurring. As other people have mentioned, the critical race theory, the LGBTQ curriculum, things that maybe parents would like to teach their children themselves from their own background, their own religious standpoint. So my question would be is, I think Dr. Gruccio, you mentioned that we can review the curriculum, so could you perhaps share where that's found? I did try to look on the website earlier. I didn't see where it was specifically laid out. And can parents actually see by grade what their child will be learning that year in each of their core subjects? So that we can see actually, so if we wanted to opt out, I believe that's a choice. If we want our child to opt out of a certain category, how would we know when that's being taught during the school year to be able to pull our child out of the classroom for that particular lesson? I know that they say, like for health ed or sex ed classes, that we can do that. In all the years I've been in this township, I've never been notified once that my child was going to learn about any of those topics. So how will I know that now, I guess, is my main question regarding curriculum. My other topics were just something regarding the buses, just a suggestion. I know it's been beaten down before about upperclassmen being able to drive to school, but perhaps that's something, if we can create more parking, might be a cheaper option than putting more buses and bus drivers out there. We have a lot of juniors that could drive that are not able to. We do limit our seniors driving. It's an earned option for them. I understand that, but if it would alleviate, I mean, I know growing up, everyone could drive to high school if you had your license. Why is that not an option here? We have land, space. It seems as though maybe a little bit increased parking could help alleviate some of the bus runs, just a thought. And then just quickly, a last comment on the class rank. I am in favor of keeping it. Just from personal experience, my daughter just graduated, and I can tell you out of the 7 colleges she applied to, every one of them asked for her class rank. So I do think it's still an important request from universities that we need to consider keeping it until universities change their policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to, let me see about, we haven't yet discussed seniors parking. We did have that last year to some extent, and I think that's something that we need to talk about again. So we'll put a bookmark in that one, and then I'm going to turn to Dr. Cruccio for the curricular questions.
Yeah, well, I'm a little confused because people are coming up this tonight and talking about changes to the curriculum. I don't have any changes to the curriculum for you. But again, I've also been told that's on Facebook. But I will assist you with letting you know that the curriculum can be found under Community Resources. There's a curriculum link. And when you check that, you will see that every content area is there. And when you click on the content area, you can see our progress indicators and all the information that is outlined in our Understanding by Design outline. Ms. Moss, is there anything you want to add regarding curriculum that you have set up and that you're overseeing here, the content specialist?
Sure. So as Dr. Gruccio mentioned before, if you do have specific questions about when topics are taught, certainly reach out to the content supervisors. Most of them are broken into either 3 units for trimesters or 4 units for the marking period, which is what we use to follow. Also, any major changes that are made to the curriculum, we do present to the board. I did present in the spring about mandates that are being passed down, but there were no major changes to the curriculum or implementation for this school year. And with that being said, also throughout our budget process in the fall, each content supervisor does come and present on any major changes that will happen to the curriculum, any major changes to resources, and that's also a full board presentation in the public. So you will have notice on that when those changes are being made throughout that process.
But again, reach out and we would gladly be able to sit down and take you through the curriculum and, hook you up with a meeting with any of our content area supervisors. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Sure.
Thank you, Pete. Debbie Rockelman, 189 Alder Avenue. I think what the concern with the curriculum is, I did look on the website today and saw what Dr. Gruccio just mentioned. There was pages and pages from, pre-K to 12th grade describing the goals and what is to be taught and so forth and so on. I think what the concern here is more what books are being used. There's no way for us to know what books are being used. I'd like to know what book you're using for science for 3rd grade and 4th grade, or what book, do you know what I mean? So I can look at it and say, well, okay, this is the book we're looking at, this is what we're using, but there's this in here or that in here. I think that's what is not being said, but that was my question. I called your office today to find that out, and I went and did my research and found out all, and I was impressed by what I saw, that it's all there. I just want to know, where is the instruction coming from? Are you using the book that another township is using that shows for 4th grade that this is from Facebook? But it appears to be legitimate. I did a little research into it, but were there pictures of different genders of couples being together in a 4th grade book? Okay, now that's what we're looking for. We want to see that. Yeah, but you know what? If you don't ask and you don't see, you don't know what comes out. Do you know what I mean? You have to question. I have to question. I have to say, I'd like to see it. You know, do we even use books anymore when I sub? I don't see a lot of books. There's a lot of usage on computers, which is, you know, okay, but I'd like to know. Lillian, is that something that's
Well, you can
possible?
just direct the question.
I'm sorry,
here
Pete.
and I'll,
Okay,
you know.
is that something that's available? Can we get like a list of the books that are used in first grade or second grade, or, you know, I want to look at them. I want to see them for myself, you know. That's, you know, and to Pete, to you again, I apologize. But when I apologized, it would have been nice if you had simply just acknowledged that, because it was a sincere apology. I don't mean to do that, but so out in public. All right? So let's be adults, okay? Thank you very much. I know you guys don't, I wouldn't take this job if you paid me $1 million freaking a year. Okay, seriously. So thank you very much for everything that you do.
Anything, Doc?
Yes, the resources that we use for instruction are located in those curriculum documents. And each year, the board approves a textbook list. And we do have a textbook committee that comes in. The curriculum committee does come in and review any new textbooks that we have. So any resource that's used in the classroom is board approved. But if you look a little deeper in there, you'll see the resources. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, do we have any other comments here before we see if there's any on the phones?
I just wanted to clarify, when I said you work for us or with us, that's what I meant. I understand that you guys are all volunteers, and I am deeply grateful to every single one of you. I know it's stressful because there's special ed and general ed and the parents and this, and there are a lot of moving parts that need to be considered. But, you know, I didn't want it to come off as, you know, I'm being patronizing or anything like that. I sincerely am grateful and understand that you are volunteers, but I would just, you know, when I heard that, it was just, oh my God, they're trying to take our comment and our voice away. So that's why I kind of felt that I needed to speak up, and maybe it came up the wrong way, but thank you. That's what all I wanted to clarify.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, we'll at this time see if anyone's on the phone. And we'll go to the phones.
There are no emails that were received by yesterday 4 p.m.
Okay.
So we will just wait for phone calls to come in. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Anaya, anything else?
No.
Okay, are we done?
No calls.
Okay. All right, at this time, we'll go to board member comments. Mr. Della Barca. Mr. Della Barca.
Mr. Della Barca, my last name that I've had for so many years. I just want to just want to make a point to the two speakers who were commenting about my report. I don't know if you all know this, but I have a role as county president of the School Boards Association for Atlanta County. Mr. Ireland happens to be our vice president for the county. And what these state meetings are people have presenters on different topics. All I was trying to do is report what was presented, not advocate any of those positions. So I'm sorry that she left. Maybe she'll watch me on TV later. But I certainly was, you know, I was president of this board at one time. I certainly listened to everybody. I give everybody the opportunity. We follow the rules. We have to have some kind of guidelines for a public presentation. If we don't have guidelines, we certainly might be here. And we have been here till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. But I don't want anybody to think that I'm against public speaking of people coming to our meetings. So I apologize if that came over wrong, but I was strictly trying to report what some other people were saying so that you would all, the board members would understand that sometimes that's the kind of talk that's going on around the state. But that doesn't mean I advocate it. Thank you.
I want to support Mr. Delbark in his efforts. I spent 4 years as county president as well. And what you do is you hear all sorts of different thoughts and ideas from presenters and speakers from all in and outside of the state with many ideas. And you take it all, and some of it you use and some of it you don't use, but you process it. And we, you know, again, we certainly do accommodate our public comment. And we're always generous. People during some of the times during COVID, everyone went over 3 minutes, you know, so and we do the best we can. And as Mr. Delbarca said, there needs to be order at a meeting. Sometimes you're not always the most popular person in the room, but there does. So in other words, we can't have, you know, a shouting match back and forth from the seats. I'm just not going to allow it. I mean, because that's we're gonna it's going to turn into a three-ring circus. We have to, you know, we operate under Robert's Rules of Order. We recognize a speaker one at a time. That goes for folks up here as well, and that's how we have an orderly and, you know, hopefully a polite and intelligent discourse, as opposed to, you know, some sort of, you know, mob or shouting match type of an atmosphere, which no one wants to have, because it doesn't really help anyone. And it doesn't help the students. We're here for students at the end of the day. We're 9 volunteers plus all our administrators. We're here to do the best we can for students. And sorry, I spoke too long. Any other board members? All right, let me see if I get the order. Mrs. Sullivan, then Ms. Alabarda.
I'd like to speak to the parents that spoke about curriculum, and I do understand exactly where you're coming from. There's been a lot of states that have outlawed the critical race theory, and I know, you know, that is publicized on TV and on Facebook and wherever. I understand where your concerns are coming from. The best we can do is to review the curriculum as we can. Having it online, hopefully, you know, you'll go in and you'll read your students. For us to read 1,000 books is a lot more than for you to read 10 books or look at 10 books. So I understand where the concerns are coming, and I have those concerns also. And I've challenged Lily to, Ms. Moss, to actually inform us when big changes are coming. And I really request that you go through the chain of command first if you don't find it online. And if you go through the chain of command and you're still not happy, you can always reach out to the superintendent. She really is very proactive in any parental concerns. So I do understand where you're coming from, because transgender studies has been mandated. I'm not sure when that's coming in. The critical race is another concern. Bringing in sex education to younger ages is a concern. So I hear your concerns, and I think that they can be addressed, but you have to do your homework too. So, because we can't be everywhere and read every curriculum. So go through the chain of command, and if you're not happy with that, then I ask you to reach out to any of the administrators. Thank you.
Ms. Albarda next.
So I wanted to start with, I love being a board member, and I don't need $1 million to do this job. I'm happy to do it for free. I really enjoy it because, you know, I'm a teacher myself. And after listening to the parents and between being here, at home, everything I've heard since Governor Murphy made his announcement, I was wondering if we can put in a resolution for making masks optional based on counties, because every county doesn't have the same spread rate right now. And just because maybe up near New York it's spreading faster, you know, down here we're still okay. I'm an ESL teacher, and it's going to be a very difficult job for me to teach my students in September because, first of all, they read my lips, I read their lips. So I'm going to look to get special masks made. And I'm also asthmatic. So, like, I understand. And all the teachers understand. I mean, teachers I know understand too. So I just wonder if that is a possibility or something we can do.
Well, I don't know, are you asking me, or do we want to, I want to finish with if there are any other board members that have comment?
Well, I had a comment, but it wasn't in regards to the mask.
Let me do that first. Okay, we had a late public comment. Let's do that, and then we'll come back.
You are now live streaming. Please state your name and address.
Jessica Murphy, 43 Marsh Road. Good evening. I'm calling as a parent of one of the preschoolers in the multiple disability classroom at Slaybaugh. First, she has some feeding difficulties that she's had since birth, and her speech therapist through the district had mentioned that a few of the professionals were getting ready to be approved through the district and the board to get specialized feeding therapy training because they have a huge need, not just with my daughter, but across the district. And I was curious if there were any update whether or not that training was on anyone's radar, because I know that my daughter, in addition to other kids, could really use feeding therapy. Thank you.
That sounds to me like a very legitimate individual concern, and so I'll ask our administration to get in touch with that parent.
I have her contact information. I can
Okay,
share.
very good. Okay, so then let's resume now with board member comment and see if I get the order right. Were you next, Ms.
Ms. Bird
Mrs.
does have her hand up.
Floyd?
I'm not sure where she is in the mix.
Right.
Ms. Bird, do you have your hand up?
I do, thank you. I can wait if Mr. Price was first.
Okay, I just have a brief question, if I may, Mr. President. In regards to the curriculum, it's probably a question more for Ms. Moss. I did see in the media that the governor signed law requiring civics to be put into the curriculum. When will that take effect here in Egg Harbor Township? That's a law now that we're going to have to teach civics. Could you elaborate on that a little bit further, if you would?
Sure. So all the changes in social studies are for the 22 school year. So as I spoke with our curriculum committee throughout this whole process, we'll be working on that throughout this school year, and Ms. Hannigan is working with student representatives, and she's very devoted to making sure that all those curricular changes are done with all the stakeholders' voices in there. So we will be presenting pieces of that as those changes happen with all the new social studies standards for the 22-23 school year throughout next year.
Okay, thank you. And as a board member that served on the curriculum committee in the past, I enjoyed serving on the curriculum. I'm on finance and operations now. But I learned that there's only so many hours in a day, and there's a lot of curriculum, and we can only teach state-approved curriculum. So you have to weigh everything in to what it is that you're going to do and have to prioritize what you're going to teach. I've always been go for the technology when I was on curriculum. make room for technology, because that's the way of the future. But some people went back and discussed cursive writing, and I mean, that's great too, but you don't have the time. And there's more pressing issues, I think, that need to be taught during the course of the day. So, but anyway, thank you, Ms. Moss. That clarifies that question for me.
Okay, I think Mrs. Byrd next. Mrs. Gilbert-Floyd, did you have something or not?
Me?
All right, she's going to say Mrs. Byrd.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to thank you, all the commenters that came to the meeting tonight and eloquently discussed their concerns and asked their questions. It's so refreshing when we have community feedback that comes in, whether it's in agreement or disagreement with policies that we have, but when it's done in such a respectful, factual way, it's awesome. And so thank you to our community for coming so well prepared and so eloquently with your views. As far as I really liked the suggestion that one community member made and what Ms. Alvarda had suggested as well. If we did approach the governor asking for any kind of relief from using masks, do we have any information from Egg Harbor Township as to our vaccination rates here in the township, as well as do we have any idea of how many of our staff and students are vaccinated? Because if we have a high enough vaccination rate in the community and a low rate of spread, then maybe that is considerations we can make in drafting a resolution to present to the governor. Because I agree with that masks are definitely necessary in us trying to stop COVID. However, masks do impede some things that happen in a classroom. As an educator who teaches literacy, I know that teaching my students sounds in learning how to read is really difficult with a mask on. And so a lot of what the one parent said really is accurate. It can be difficult teaching and listening and for students hearing. So those all have, those are real things. And so it's something to be said to know what our rates are and use that information to make educated decisions. So that was my comment, and I hope everyone has a great evening tonight.
Did you, Mrs. Gilbert-Floyd next. Mrs. Sullivan after that.
Excuse me, I just want to say I do agree with Mrs. Byrd in the reference to having community members come out and express their opinions, thoughts, concerns, and bringing them to the Board of Education. And also, tonight is a night that I didn't think I would feel this way, but tonight, because usually there's other nights that I feel like, you know what, I'm so glad that I'm a part of this Board of Education to be a part of, I always say, to be at the decision-making process of being at the table. I just heard a lot of interesting comments that were made tonight that really kind of made me feel as if we, that our issue is, it's not just mask versus mask or not wearing a mask. What's being taught in the curriculum or what's being included or what's not being included. I think one of the things that Dr. Grucia had talked about, some of the trainings that are going to be given to the district. And it's also, I think, open to the community as well, Dr. Grucia, talking about the climate and culture of our district, discussing the equity training for our district and our community. And I think the word equity is a huge word that I hope that Egg Harbor Township, I know that the district is pushing it and embracing equity. And that can make people feel uncomfortable. That can make people, and I wrote this down and said, in reference to the meetings when Mr. Della Barker talked about the meetings and how they should be ran and how they should be conducted. I said that, an orderly meeting does not equal censorship. We're all adults and we have to follow rules and regulations, whether it's at our job or whether we're a part of an organization. So someone, requiring certain things at a meeting that they invite you to, I hope that people didn't feel offended. I know some people did feel offended, but we do have to try to run our meetings in an orderly fashion, so it's not censorship. But back to what I was saying, I think our bigger issue is beyond masks, it's beyond the mandates. It's really about Egg Harbor Township and embracing equity. Whether it's in a curriculum, whether it's in the books that we read. I know when I was in school, I've had some books that were a part of the curriculum that made me feel very uncomfortable with some of the verbiage and language that was in the books. And it took a long time for those books to be, whether they were removed or whether they were modified or what have you. So I'm just really excited that we're going to have the culture and climate training and the equity training, because I still say, in the midst of the pandemic, in the midst of us having pre-K, full-time pre-K, kindergarten, all the great things that we've done, I still say that one of the biggest issues I see in Egg Harbor Township is the issue of embracing equity within our community and within our school system. Whether it's special ed students, whether it's issues of race and inclusivity, we have a bigger thing that's on the table, because the pandemic at one point will be over, but we'll still be left with the issues that are on the table. And that's just my opinion. That's what I felt and saw tonight. Agree or disagree, but I think that's the overshadowing issue.
Mrs. Sullivan, did you have something else? Were there any other board members? Mrs. Salaki.
Yes, I believe that the vaccine rate for Egg Harbor Township is on the New Jersey dash. Also, I hear that 97% of over 65 years and older in Egg Harbor Township have been given their first shots. So I'd say that we're pretty close to being covered, and if there's more data that we need to look at, then maybe we can do that resolution that was talked about and not having the mask or making the mask optional.
Any other board members? We have one more meeting left in August. And I guess I'm going to piggyback off of Mrs. Gilbert Floyd. I felt there was a good bit of politics in this boardroom tonight, where it doesn't belong, on a number of topics. But, my concern is that, we're bringing politics into a question of public health. Our goal here is to return our students safely to in-person learning 5 days a week. We have a situation now where we have the...
I'm sorry, there's a car alarm going off in the parking lot. It's a Mustang GT looking vehicle, kind of blue in the dark. You may have hit your button. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We have a new Delta variant spreading rapidly. Some call it a third wave, some call it a fourth wave. We have students in our school buildings under 12 that are not able to get a vaccine. The only way to protect those under 12 is with a mask. Now, there are exceptions available that are carved out, and we would, of course, honor those. And I'd also be interested in the data that Mrs. Bird asked for with regard to our students 12 and over. What is their vaccination rate, and that of our staff, and beyond that, of our community. But as far as just a political reaction to what the governor has put forth to try to keep students, staff, and their family and loved ones safe, I wouldn't be in favor of that. Thank you. Is there anything from administration? Oh, Mr. Ireland.
I apologize. I just wanted to see, so are we going to get data on all that stuff that board member Mrs. Bird said, and then do a straw poll for Mrs. Albarda, what she mentioned, or are we looking at that for next week possibly as a discussion point, or get a straw poll or something? I was just trying to see where we gauge as a board.
Well, what I can share is that we are going to be discussing a vaccination survey, in fact, tomorrow with some stakeholders, important stakeholders in the district. After that, we intend to release a vaccination survey to our staff. That's my intent. When is the due date? So what I'm trying to measure here is if I'm going to have that data for next Tuesday night.
I would probably say that it would be hard to get all of that data in less than a week after our conversation tomorrow.
So Dr. Crucio will report as much data as she has between now and next Tuesday. And, you know, majority rules as always. Is there anything else, anything from administration?
It's 9:45.
Okay. Understood on that one. Okay. So thank you, everyone, for coming out. A very productive meeting. I understand there's a lot of very difficult issues floating around. A lot of very hard decisions to work through. We've made it this far through this pandemic, and I'm very confident that we will successfully make it all the way through to the end. Our students will start school in September safely, and we'll go from there. So with that, I want to thank you all again for coming out. We'll see you next Tuesday. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
By acclamation, we are adjourned. Thank you.